Hey guys, it's Zoe here, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about painting. About the beginning of quarantine, I decided to get back into painting. When I was a kid, I used to paint a lot. That was my dream, was to be an artist, and I told everyone that was what I was going to be when I grew up. And then, you grow up and you kind of drop the things you used to do as a kid, and that's what happened to me. Quarantine hit, and all of a sudden I was bored, really bored, just didn't know what to do, and I realized I had a couple canvases laying around, and I decided that I would go ahead and paint, and I decided to paint my boyfriend an octopus. And when I asked him what I should paint him, he said to make it like Starry Night. So that's what I did, and that started my whole painting journey that I've had of 2020. So since then I have painted many paintings, I think maybe 20. I don't know if I'll go through all of them today, but I hope to get through at least my favorites. So the Starry Night Octopus is still one of my favorites, even though it's been many months since I've painted it. I just love the little details to it, and it's so unique, and it's such a unique idea, and I would have never thought of it had I not asked my boyfriend what he would like the octopus to look like. And after doing some Google searches, no one had even recreated what we had wanted, so we made it ourselves, and it looks amazing. I love it so much, and it hangs over my bed. Vincent van Gogh, or Van Gogh if you're American, is one of my favorite painters, and he has inspired a lot of my paintings, although I haven't completely recreated anything of his yet. I like his little technique, and I love the idea of having the paints be kind of splattered across and not necessarily this big one streak. And that's something I've read in a couple of art books that I've read, and a couple of different YouTube videos have suggested don't overblend. A lot of people overblend their paintings, and you think up close, as you're painting up close, and you're thinking this needs to be blended out because it looks like crap. But the truth is, the less you blend, the more little details you have once your painting is far away. I feel like a lot of my paintings don't look the best up close, but when you're looking at them far away, you're like, wow, that's really nice. So I just kind of keep that mentality as I'm painting, that I'm looking at it way different than anyone else is going to look at it in the future. In the future, these paintings are going to be hung up on a wall, and you're not going to be staring at one little dot on the painting where it looks weird. So as I go through my paintings, I want to tell you guys a little bit about what inspired my paintings, and maybe a little tips that I can give you guys. I don't want to say that I'm this professional painter or anything like that. I am wanting to sell my art eventually, but I'm not this professional painter. I'm completely self-taught. I took art classes in elementary school, but that's it. I haven't taken any since then. All that I know comes from some books that I got from Goodwill years ago, and then YouTube videos, and a lot of just practice. I paint relatively, I like to say every day, but since school started back up again, I really haven't been painting every day, but I try to paint an hour a day. That would be the goal. And now I'm painting probably an hour every 3 days, maybe 2 days. It's not quite as often as I was doing it, but it's still pretty frequently, and I think that goes for anything you enjoy. You want to do it often, and you want to practice a lot to get better at it. I already showed you guys the Starry Night Octopus, and his name is Squiggles, and that was my first painting I did of 2020. Now, my next painting was a galaxy painting, and this was inspired because I've wanted to do a galaxy painting all of my life pretty much. Since that was this big trend, I was really intrigued and wanted to give my try at it. And so this was my first ever galaxy painting. It's also hanging up on the wall of my room. And you can see on the edges of it, I also love painting the edges of paintings. I think that one little detail sets it apart from other paintings. I like to have it just continue, it feels a little more 3D, I guess, if I do that. So anyways, you can see on the edges, it doesn't look galaxy. And the story behind that is, I did a lot of painting growing up, and I didn't have a lot of canvases. But with the canvases I did have, I liked to paint on them and paint quotes mainly. I never was scenery and stuff like that, probably because I like to write. This had an old Taylor Swift quote on it. I believe it was, "One last time, break my heart in the blink of an eye." And it was kind of cringy. It was green and yellow. I didn't like it. I didn't even like it years ago. I had already started painting over it before I started doing the galaxy, and I was painting over black. I should have used white. I don't know why I was doing black, but I think that's because that's the only color I could find at the time. It was like halfway painted over, but not fully, and it was just laying in my closet. So when I decided to do the galaxy painting, I used that because it was already started almost. But I wanted to leave the little edges still of the old painting to remind me of what it used to be. So for my first galaxy painting, I think I did a pretty cool job, and it really kind of makes me think of not necessarily just the galaxy, but like the lovers in the galaxy, like the stars being in love with the moon. And I really love the idea that like Earth has one moon, but other planets have all these moons, and like Jupiter, I don't even know how many moons that Jupiter has, but it's a lot of moons. So I'm really obsessed with the idea of like Jupiter's moons being jealous of someone watching that moon, if that makes sense. So like on Earth, like imagine we have two moons, and so you're looking at this moon, but someone else is looking at that moon. So do the moons ever get jealous that some people are looking at one moon over the other? So it was just kind of like personifying that idea, and I wrote a poem about it like ages ago, and so when I painted this, I really was thinking about like that kind of, even though there's no moons there, there's just some stars. And from there, I'm gonna kind of leave the timeline I have going, because I honestly can't remember which paintings I've done like next, and some paintings I have given away to family, so I don't have all of my paintings, but I want to include at least a picture of all my paintings. Even if I don't talk about them, I'll have them all, I guess, at the end of the video, and you guys can just pause and stare at them as long as you like. And if you feel inspired and you're like, wow, I want to recreate that, just let me know and I want to check it out. So this is a painting that I usually have the dates on the back of it, but I actually don't know when I finished, though I have an art journal of each painting that I keep a log of when I started painting, when I finished the painting, just for fun. And about how long it took me, I like to keep track of that. And this painting actually does not have a date on the back, so I'd have to check my art log to really tell you guys when this was made. I think this is one of my earlier paintings. I started this painting thinking about the sky and wanting to paint something of just the sky, like looking up at it, and then it became the ocean, and it's really calming and relaxing, and I really love this painting. I want to show you guys a little closer up of it so I can let you guys know some little details about it that had happened when I was painting. So right there, I wanted to have a ship, and my idea was like, this is a very stormy day and the ship is crashing. The ship completely crashed and is now submerged into water because I could not paint a ship at all. Like, I kept trying and it kept failing. So I covered it up with water. You can do that, you know. If you make a mistake, the nice thing about paint is that you can just paint over it. Another little detail that I love about this painting are these little birds. I just think they're very cute. And the technique I used for the sky was just wetting my brush and dipping it in blue and just really rubbing it over very lightly, and I didn't use it very thickly, and I think that gave a very stormy looking sky, and I think it really turned out really nice. Kind of have nice little clouds forming. So from this, I made a little poem about taking your lover out to sea and wanting to live out on the ocean with them to get away from everybody, because everybody is like trying to wreck their relationship. And that's one of the things I love to do with my paintings, is to think of like a story that goes along with it. And this one's about a lover lost at sea, but you're with your lover. A lover kidnapped another lover and took them to sea. Okay, so this one is a bigger painting. I guess most of my paintings are pretty small. I think they're by 8 by 12s maybe, and this one's a lot bigger. One of my favorite companies to buy canvases from is Blick. I'm not sponsored at all by them, I just love them. I think they have low prices and you can buy a lot, and it's all online, which is perfect for this COVID life we're living. I do not have this polar bear named. I should probably think of a name though. And I love painting the ocean. That's one of my favorite things to do. So I really wanted to have like a little creature in the ocean, and that's kind of what inspired this one. Here it is a little closer. You can get a look at the little brush marks I have. And this is not a perfect painting by any means. I still have a lot of learning to do, like shading and depth, but you know what? Art is subjective, and maybe someone loves this. Maybe someone thinks this is very professional, and you know, maybe. I won't say I'm a bad artist, because maybe to someone out there, I'm great. One of my favorite things is his fur. I really loved that I have some blue in there, and that's one thing I've learned with painting. Each time I do a painting, I learn something new, and that's why it's so important to paint if you want to be an artist. And one thing I learned from this painting was how polar bears, we see them as white. That's what you think. You think it's white. And so when I went to go paint him, I was like, it's white. And I had no idea how I was going to be able to have the depth to him, because he's all white. So how do you have different strokes? Well, as I was painting, I didn't clean my brush off very well, and I had a little blue in it. And I was like, oh well, mistakes happen. But then I started thinking about how many other colors are in something. And the polar bear isn't just white, he's also a little blue, because he, like that, you can see that. I think that's the nice thing about artists, or they can see colors where you didn't think there were colors before. Like my hair, you think it's just brown, but if you wanted to capture it with painting, you would include red and black and maybe green. So it's like about the tones in it. Alright, so this is September 26th. I painted this feather, and this one took me a long time, and I actually kind of hit painter's block with this painting. For a long time it sat on my easel, and I did not touch it, and I stopped painting for probably a couple days, maybe even a week. It was a long time. And it was because I had painted this all purple, because I had just received my purple paint tube in the mail, and I loved the color so much I wanted to use it. And I just splattered purple all over this painting, telling myself, it'll be alright, you know, you will think of something amazing to put on it. It'll be like a fun experiment. I thought of nothing. I could not see anything in the painting. All I saw was purple, and it was a bad experiment. So it sat there for a long time as I tried to think, what do I put on this painting? And I asked my boyfriend. He saw nothing. We just kept staring at it, like, when will a creature appear? When will I see what I need to see to paint? And finally, he said he saw a feather. So I was like, okay, I'll paint a feather. And this was heavily inspired by the Mario orange feather. As I've said in a lot of other videos, I like to play games. And one game I like to play is Mario. And my boyfriend really loves Mario as well, and whenever I can incorporate something that he likes into one of my paintings, I love to do it, because it makes the painting a little more special to me, because I kind of see it as like a gift to him. So as you can see, as I was painting the purple, I was kind of envisioning maybe this would become like a flower or a butterfly. So I have a little roundness to the different areas, but nothing too crazy. And then the feather has a lot of little texture to it, and that's what I really love about this painting, is how much texture it has to it. This is actually one of my boyfriend's favorite paintings. I don't know if it's because it's Mario or he just really likes the feather, but he actually just told me as I was pulling out these paintings to do my video that we need to put it on the wall. And if it gets put on the wall, that means it's a good painting. So here's a painting I made back in August 10th to be exact. And one thing that a lot of art books tell me to do and tell others to do is that when you're painting, you should paint off of a picture, especially if you can't like be there physically the whole time. So this was made after a picture I took at, I believe it was the Arches National Park. It was definitely in Utah, and there was this little tree and the moon was way up in the sky, and I loved how it looked. So I was like, I'm gonna recreate that. And the interesting thing about this is there was no village in mind when I painted. It just happened. And that is very common in my paintings. The painting will just go ahead of me and I just have to paint where my brush leads. And I think that's the cool thing about painting. I can have one idea in my head and then what ends up being painted is something else, and I love it just as much as the thing that was in my head. It reminds me of whenever I would go homecoming dress shopping or prom dress shopping, the very first couple of times I was like, oh, I'm gonna have this very specific dress. I had it deep in my mind, this is what I'm gonna get. Then I would go shopping and couldn't find the dress that was in my head, and I'd find all these other dresses and I would pick a completely different one. So finally, maybe it was my last time shopping, but finally I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm not even gonna Pinterest shop before I go. I'm just gonna go and see whatever I find. And that made my mind it made the process a lot quicker, because once you just let go of your expectations, life can just happen and you don't have to be so worrisome or upset, not upsetted, but not to say that you shouldn't have expectations or standards or any of that. But when you're being creative, let yourself be creative. Don't confine yourself into a box. Otherwise, this village would not be there today. So I really like the little moon, and I incorporated some little tiny stars. And here is that little tree. I really liked the shading I did on it. And there is that town deep off in the distance. So I do most of my paintings up like this, as you have found out, but I do love the landscape of doing a canvas like this. I think it's nice, especially as canvases get larger. That's especially when I'm like, let's do it like this. So I made this painting back in August 12th to be exact. I did a lot of paintings in August apparently. And this makes me think of wheat blowing in a field, but that was not what this painting was intended to be. I wanted to have cracks in a rock, and the paint I chose was not brown, it was more orangey, and then I just ended up with a harvest. Which, I didn't have this in mind when I first started painting this picture, because I hadn't played the game yet, but I just got into Stardew Valley. And now this painting just makes me think of Stardew Valley because of how there's a harvesting and farming and all that jazz. I love this painting even more now because I see it as like Stardew Valley fan art. So I have a lot going on in this little painting. I have a lot of little different marks. I really was trying to play up with different leaf images and had a lot of fun with that and learning how to use my brush different ways. So this is my most recent painting. It was just done on the October 20th, and this turned out so cool. I love it. It looks like a little graffiti of an armchair, and back when I lived in a dorm, I had this little orange armchair, and I love that armchair a lot because to me, that was the place where I would sit in the dorm, and so thinking back on it, I think back fondly on that little orange armchair. And so here is the outline of an armchair that I like to visualize as the armchair of my dorm. The story for this is that my boyfriend's grandma gifted me all of these paint tubes. So many paint tubes. Probably 50 or more, I don't know how many. There were a lot of paint tubes, and she asked, well, she just said that they were pretty old and that I should go through them all and make sure that they work still, and then throw out the ones that I don't want and keep the ones I do, which was very sweet of her. I'm very thankful. It feels nice when you have family and when you have your boyfriend's family just be so nice to you and be so welcoming. Like, that was so nice of her. But oh my gosh, was that so time consuming. I went through each tube, my wrist hurt afterwards, and I would shake them all just to get a little bit of paint out and then find out, ooh, that doesn't look like what paint's supposed to look like. So when I'm doing something like that, I like to try them out on a different type of surface. So like if I'm going through markers, I'll grab a piece of paper out and I'll just rub on there the marker or the pen or whatever it is. And so I was like, let's do that to a canvas. That would be cool. And so that's what I did. I tried out every single one of the paints onto this canvas, and that became the background, and then I drew the armchair on top with black. Not with the black that she gave me though. Different tube. The black right here is the only paint that is not gifted to me from my boyfriend's grandma. So as you can see, there are a lot of paint colors, and my favorite are the ones that are like metallic. I never even thought about having metallic paints, and now I have like 3 different colors of them. Up close it kind of looks scary and weird, but far away it looks like a little bit of graffiti, and I love that. I think it's very unique, and probably one of my favorite paintings I've ever done, even though it has such a weird story to it. But really, it's the stories that make the art sometimes. This is my little Stoplight painting, inspired by a Blink-182 cover, I believe. Back, probably about a month ago now. This was made in September 17th. So back in September, my boyfriend and I went on this long journey of listening to a lot of music and a lot of albums. Like, maybe 5 albums a day. We went through all of Taylor Swift's albums in one day. It was incredible. And along that journey, we weren't just choosing music we liked, also just any music, just to hear it, so we could broaden our music ears. And one of the albums we chose to listen to was, I think it was a Blink-182 album that had a stoplight on it, and I just kept staring at the album and I was like, I have to paint something like that. So this is inspired by an album. I also want to say it's not entirely just like that album. Taylor Swift has a line that I absolutely love, and it's in her song. It goes, I asked the stoplights if it'll be alright, and they say, I don't know. And I love that because to me it's so, like, that's such a thing that I would do, is drive down the road and just be so sad and be like, what is going on with my life? What am I gonna do? Is it going to be alright? And I'm just asking anything. I could ask a rock, and in this instance I'm asking a stoplight, and it's such, like, you just want an answer. Like, you don't care who says it's gonna be alright, you just need to know it's gonna be alright. And I think it also is interesting because, like, you have stop, maybe go, and you have go. So I just think that the stoplight is a great metaphor, and I love that song lyric, and that album artwork. It's very inspiring. So I think it's great to be able to incorporate other aspects of your life into art that you also enjoy. So speaking of Taylor Swift, this was also made back in September. I believe that's September 15th. But it's kind of hard to read, so I don't know for sure. So this was inspired by Taylor Swift's album 1989. As I stated, me and my boyfriend listened to all of Taylor Swift's albums in a day, and when we were listening to her, I was like, I have to paint something while I'm listening to her. So I was inspired by 1989. This isn't my favorite painting, but I love the story of it. So here are the little seagulls, and there's the little city by the shore, and that kind of reminds me of the New York City, Welcome to New York, that Taylor Swift has. And I tried to incorporate a lot of little colors in it to make it really pop out. So this is my favorite brush. I love it so much. I use it for like everything. I just got it from a little Amazon pack and there were like 12 paintbrushes, and this one just ended up being the one I use all the time for everything. It's well worn. I'm not very good at taking care of brushes. I started cleaning them, but as I said, I'm kind of not the best at that. But it is well loved is how I see it, not well worn. I'm not a big fan of big brushes. I just tried my hand at it the other day and no, I didn't, like I thought I would enjoy it because I could have a big brush that covers the whole canvas even quicker, but it turns out I like a small brush. But I just wanted to show you guys my favorite brush because I think that is very indicative? I don't know. It shows a lot about a painter, I think, is their favorite brush. Or so, like, Google tells me that. Here is one of my favorite paintings. I actually literally bought gold paint just so I could do this painting. And I love it so much. It's inspired by my boyfriend's painting. I think maybe even his only painting he's ever done on gold canvas, and then he painted a tomato. And I just wanted to kind of recreate his painting because I thought that was a fun idea for when we have a house or whatever. We can just put both of our paintings side to side and people can come over and I'll ask them which one's better and they better say me because otherwise I'm gonna kick them out. I'm kidding! I just wanted to kind of recreate something that he's done. I thought it would be a little fun thing to do, and this ended up being really cool. I love the gold background. I definitely recommend painting in gold, guys. I love the deep color of the red in the tomato and how the gold isn't just one solid color. You can tell that it was painted on. I like that aspect as well. Alright, I went through a string of not labeling the back of these, so I don't know when this was made, just like I haven't for the past couple. This was originally supposed to be a Mario painting. I had sectioned it off with painter's tape, so that way I could do like little pixel art and have like Mario, like an 8-bit Mario. But it turned out that these canvases are way too small and I really need like a square to get it perfect. So I didn't know what to do other than paint in little colorful squares, and it ended up being a really cool painting, which also gave me a cool idea. And the idea was that like this is like a building, okay? Each of these little squares are windows. And so I was just thinking about how each window holds a different story. And especially I'm thinking back on my dorm. Everyone who lived in the dorm had a different life. And what happened in my dorm compared to what happened to someone else in someone else's dorm. I mean, I'm a fiction writer, can you tell? And I just love the idea of thinking like, what if someone exploded their bathtub? They were doing a science experiment at school and exploded their bathtub, and then it caused leaking in another part of the dorm. And it's not just a dorm. I really was envisioning maybe like a big building or an apartment building. And from that I wrote a little short story even just about someone getting asked about their life in the apartment and about how many other people have lived in the apartment. Because it's kind of a weird thing to think about, but how someone else has lived in the room that you're now sleeping in and like what life they had. Like maybe they had a cat and their cat died, and how they mourned that loss, and in the place that you're standing is where they cried 10 hours one day and then called their best friend and ate chocolate and the chocolate smeared on the ground. Like thinking about stuff like that. And so that's why I love this painting, is because each little square can have its own little story. And like with every painting, I love the edges. I always love to have the edges carry on over. That is just one of my favorite things about a painting, is having the edges carry over. Because then when you're hanging it, you can see it. I really shouldn't include that. That was cringy. That's not a guitar. I do play guitar. I play E minor chord and an A chord and an F chord. So I'm pretty good at guitar, guys. Here's the E, here's the F, here's the C. Okay, so more about my boyfriend. He has a guitar he loves called Foamy, and he's had that guitar for 10 years now. So I told him, on your 10-year anniversary, I'm gonna paint you a guitar. And this is what happened. And at first I hated the painting and I was very upset with myself because really I screwed up the 10-year anniversary. A great gift for my boyfriend. But then I chose to see it as like this little abstract guitar. And now I love it. I think it's very cool. I like the orange in the background, kind of reminds me of flames. So it's like you're playing the guitar so hard it's on fire. And the detail is very interesting, and I think it kind of reminds me a little bit about Van Gogh. So, is this Van Gogh worthy? Probably not. But here's the little detail. That's where it gets a little sketchy, but I like to pretend that it's a little abstract, and I love the blending. I really enjoy the blending I did on the back of this guitar. And this is a painting I would love to do again, and I will do again eventually. This is one of the few paintings that actually include my initials on the painting. I usually just have it signed in the background, just because I don't want to distract from the actual artwork, but I thought this one kind of seemed like one you would have it on it. And I like how it kind of changes in the colors, like a real guitar would, how it changes in the light. You never know when a painting you hate ends up being a painting you like. So this painting, I wanted to try and follow a Bob Ross tutorial, and for my first ever attempt, I think it's pretty good, but I was kind of disappointed. I don't know why. I'm not good with mountains and landscapes or Bob Ross, probably because I don't have the same tools as him. There are things I like about this painting though. I really like the fog and clouds. I love painting clouds, especially the technique I mentioned earlier where I wet my brush and then gently put it on. I think it looks really cool when you do that. When you don't just paint blue on it, but you actually kind of gradually grow it. It makes a cool technique. My mountains are very 2D, and I think that's my problem with it, is just how two-dimensional it is. But I do love the fog that carries in between the mountains. I really like that, and I love the texture I did, especially how the reflection is on the water. And that technique is just where it's wet here, and then you pull it down on the brush. And that became really cool. I love that technique when I found out how to do that. So thank you. Thank you, Bob Ross. So after that failure of a mountain painting, I was like, I need to redeem myself and paint a new landscape. So I picked a picture of Ireland, and it became the Antarctic. And that's the nice thing. Painting will become something you didn't expect. This is supposed to be kind of like a waterway going down, and then I love that. It looks like a moon. I don't know how I did it. And then these rocks are very nice. I really like these little rocks. And then you have a little iceberg, which, watch out, Titanic. You might get hit by it. And the cool thing is, this was intended just to be a cloud, and it ended up being a moon. And it kind of gave this a little like out of this world vibe. My favorite though is how those rocks turned out. Like I mentioned earlier, I really focused on the different tones, and I kind of included a little blue in there because the rocks kind of have blue in them. And I really worked on that mountain technique again and tried to make it feel a little more 2D. I think the reason I struggled was because I didn't have the right shading, and I'm still working on that, learning how to make a little shading. And it's okay to keep on working, because if I was perfect, why would I keep painting? You paint because you want to get better. You do that for anything. So how about that, Bob Ross? Do I have your technique down yet? No, but I'm getting there. So this is a huge painting. I did this back in June, actually, June 8th, and it is huge, and it reminds me of a rose. This is inspired by an artist on Instagram, actually. She did a little tiny yellow rose, and I was like, I can do that, and I wanted to make a giant rose, so that's what I did. I included a lot of little details, like the little veins, and this one took me quite a while because I did not know what how to draw a rose. This one was done. This one was done on September 11th, inspired by a Reddit post about the world's smallest pygmy rabbit. They have bright, colorful ears, and as soon as I saw the picture of how cute and tiny they were, I was like, I have to paint that. So definitely my favorite thing are the little ears. They're bright and colorful, and the background was really fun to make because I like to include a lot of different colors and shades. So I used yellow and green and a little bit of black and white to kind of add some texture to it. And then for painting the little rabbit, I included a lot of texture to make it seem like he has a little fur and a little more 2D, because that's my biggest problem, is making things look 2D. So when Taylor Swift's new album came out called Folklore, I was like, I have to paint the album art. So I have it upside down. So this is me trying to recreate her album art. I wanted to do a little bit of like a wintry, foresty vibe, and that is what I did. I used painter's tape and I just put them down, and then I painted the background, and I have a lot going on in there. It was a lot of layering and a lot of peeling tape. And I also added some snow, and to do that you just use a toothbrush and you kind of flick it, and that was something I really struggled with when I first did the galaxy painting, because you also use that technique for stars. But now I think I kind of got it down now a little better. One of my most recent paintings is this whale, which I did on October 8th, and I wanted to kind of have this whale like peeking up, and you have like you're on a boat and you're looking down, and it's this giant whale, and he's just swimming on by and just being a nice little friendly whale. And as you can see, I included some yellow to kind of show like the boat's, like the reflection of a boat's light onto it. And I love painting the ocean. I love how waves move and just trying to capture that. I think that's something I'm going to continue to always want to try and capture. And I really tried to make the whale not just black. I wanted to have multiple colors, like having a little blue in there. You could also see this as just a giant ship as well, I guess. That kind of looks like a ship. It could be a ship. That is the beauty of art. It can be anything you want it to be. I painted a tomato and you said a tomato. I love the story behind this. I was kind of halfway awake and I had my eyes closed, and I just pictured this abandoned swing set in the winter time, and so I was like, I have to paint that. And so on August 26th I painted it that day. I was busy doing something else that day, but I said, nope, I have to paint. So I have the forest and The forest was actually incredibly hard to make because I had a lot of layering to do. I had to have the forest way in the back and then the forest up close, so I tried really hard to paint that. And as I do with a lot of my paintings, I first do the background and then I decide what I want to have on top of it. And I go to like, I think it's called PixArt, and it's an app where I can draw on whatever it is, like the picture. And so I took a picture of the background and then I drew what I wanted the swing set to look like. And I do that with a lot of my paintings. Like Squiggles, my octopus, my Starry Night octopus. I drew him first and then that gives me a rough idea of what it'll look like, and then it also helps me practice drawing before I'm drawing on the canvas. I low-key think this looks like a hot dog. But it's a roasted hot dog in the wintertime that you're gonna eat. I love the grass in this. I love the little piles of snow I have going on, and I think this one feels a lot more 3D to me than my other paintings, which I really appreciate that aspect. So this was also inspired by a photo. It was a picture I took back at Kings Island of some daisies in a field, and it actually ended up looking like I have two paintings in one, so it's a buy one get one. I love the little detail of this, of the little daisies. And I had to work with a lot of shading. I had to do a lot of different tones and to get the depth right. I didn't get the depth right, but I worked very hard to figure that out for this painting, and I'm still learning, but it is the process and I will get there eventually. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get the last painting we're going to take a look at. So this is one I created back on October 6th, and it's just really simple, just the ocean with a wave. And I just made this one quickly and fast because I was painting another painting and I had poured way too much blue. So I was like, I'm gonna make the ocean. And I went ahead and I painted this, even though I probably should have sat on it and thought about what I wanted to do first, but I can't let that paint go to waste. So I wanted this one to be a little simple, really like kind of abstract, like whatever you want it to be, it can be. And so I have a little bit of coloring like I did in that whale picture, where I have the yellow of the lights on the wave. And then down here we have deeper in the ocean, and then we have the lightness of a wave. And so I really wanted to just capture the different colors that you can find in the ocean. Alright. So those are not all my paintings, but it is most of them. I have done a couple of paintings I have given away, so I do not have them here physically with me. I think I have two I've given to my mom, a flower, and then a painting of the shed in our backyard. And then I gave one to my sister, which was a very cool cat painting. She loves cats, so I thought it was perfect, and it was all rainbowy, and it was a really cool painting, and I'm kind of sad I didn't keep it, but it's fine. I'll just paint it again. So those are all my paintings, most of them at least. I tried to give you guys a good description of what really inspires me to paint and kind of little tips. And I'm hoping to sell my paintings eventually. That would be a great way to finance my little hobby of mine. And I think if you are not painting, if you feel like you're not a painter, just give it a go. Buy some cheap paper, buy some cheap paints, and just do it. I mean, I find it very relaxing. Though I know everyone is different. What relaxes you might not relax me. Some people find it relaxing to run every morning. I like to run, but I don't find it relaxing. I like to use it to get out my anger. I think painting is great. I think it's really rewarding to have a nice painting at the end of the day. And I hope you guys just enjoyed me going through some of my paintings, and maybe, just maybe, it inspired you. Until next video, stay totally awesome.
Zoe.